Amy and I were at conference this week, and Alan Seibel was scheduled to preach, and then his father passed away. The funeral was in Lamar, Missouri yesterday. And so in the middle of the week, our great staff knew Drew Moss was coming and asked him if he could preach today for us. And so I know God is going to do something special in our teaching time this morning. Drew Moss is a minister with Focus, the Fellowship of Christian University Students, from over at OSU in Stillwater. And so I know that makes some of you very, very happy this morning that we have someone from Cowboy Land that's going to be preaching to us this morning. But he's an Ozark grad. He's a great man of the Word, and he met with our middle school and high school earlier this morning just to talk to them about opportunities and ministry. Even if you go to OSU and OU, if you don't go to a Bible college, what some of the ministry opportunities are there. So we're glad he got to share in that time, and he's going to get to share in this time this morning. So if you would, let's give a warm Oakwood welcome to Drew Moss.
Thank you, guys. Sorry I sat so far back you had to clap a little longer till I made it up here. So there you go. I appreciate it. I do, man. I really appreciate the opportunity to come hang out with you guys for a little bit, to come visit with you, and even to come share with you a little bit from my heart and hopefully from God's heart and His Word. Love being here with you guys, and also just I want to say, just thank you for your role in our ministry and for the support that this church gives to us. It's so good, like I said last time, to be able to put faces to names and to be able to know the people who are partnering with us as we reach out to students at OSU. I believe in the value of that ministry. I believe God's heart is there for students on campus, and that's why we're there. And I believe that the role you play through your prayers and your finances is huge and so helpful. And so thank you for that. And thank you for the opportunity to kind of come here and speak with you guys for a little bit. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to actually just start us off with some prayer. Let's do that. Dear God, I through our time of worship am just reminded of how great and amazing you are. And man, that's just the idea to come here and just speak, hopefully on your behalf and from your word. What a task, and who's up to that? I just want to ask, Lord, at this time that you would awaken our hearts, that you would give us a passion for the things that you have a passion for, and a passion to know you, that your Holy Spirit would do what I cannot and reach into our hearts, speak to us and change us today. I ask you that in Jesus' name. Amen. There are some things in life that are worth getting excited about, and other things that are not so much worth getting excited about. I learned this a little bit a few weeks ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago now. My wife and I, someone gave us tickets to the Bedlam basketball game at Gallagher-Iba Arena. Okay? And you might think as a campus minister that happens all the time or something since I'm there. It doesn't really too often. It had actually been about a year or two since I had been to a game, and my wife hasn't been since our first child was born almost 4 years ago. And so she hadn't been for a while. I hadn't been for a while, and I was pumped. Not just because we were getting to go to a game, but because of the particular game that it was. Bedlam. Okay, playing OU, our in-state rival, and not just that, but OSU had recently those of you guys who've been following, recently around that time, they kind of started turning their season around, and they were on a little bit of a streak. They had just beaten KU, and things were starting to look up. OU was actually starting to play really well, and so this game was going to have some kind of tournament implications for the end of the year. And there was a rumor that Gallagher-Iba had sold out. That like every seat was going to be filled and that it was going to be full and noisy, kind of like back in the Eddie Sutton days. Any of you guys, OSU fans, remember the Eddie Sutton days going there and it just being chaos there and how fun that was. And I remember as a kid traveling to Stillwater and getting to see some of those games. It's when I heard it might be like that again. I just couldn't help it. I was eager to get there. And I found myself like every day waking up a little bit more excited and a little bit more excited, and it was getting closer and I just couldn't wait. My wife, on the other hand, was equally as excited as me, but for a completely different reason. You see, to Amy, the sole purpose for sporting events, the only reason they exist, is to serve hot pretzels at the concession stand. That's the only reason you have sporting events as far as she's concerned. That's the only reason you go to sporting events. And so when I told her, she was just as giddy and as excited as me, except for she was excited for the pretzel. In fact, I think that may have actually been the first words out of her mouth, if I remember right, is, hey, we got tickets to Bedlam, baby. Great seats. We're going to be sitting like mid-court. And she said, I'm going to get a pretzel. And I know what you're thinking, man, if your wife loves pretzels that much, you just go buy her some pretzels, man. You can get those at no, you don't understand. It's not the same, or so I'm told. It's not the same unless you get it at the game. So you can go buy the $5 pack, and put it in your freezer and have 6 of them there, but that's not the same as paying $13 for a pretzel at the OSU game. Okay, and so that's what she got jazzed about. And sure enough, first thing, we go in, we get our tickets, we pay, we go in, and we don't even find our seats. We don't even get ourselves situated. First thing we do is head straight to the concession stand, get ourselves a pretzel. She had that thing eaten before tip-off, all right? Before things had even started. There are some things that are really worth getting excited about, and some things, in my opinion, that are not so much worth getting excited about. The problem is that most of us spend our lives being passionate about and being excited about and getting eager for things that don't really matter all that much. Like hot pretzels. And yes, if I'm honest, even OSU basketball. As much as I love it, it's just 20-year-olds trying to put a ball on a hoop. And if I let that determine the way my week goes, then I might be a little bit crazy. I have to acknowledge that sometimes. There are some things that were really worth being eager for, getting excited about. We've been going through at the table, which is, it's kind of Focus is the name of our campus ministry. The table is the name of our house where we meet. And so sometimes we call it the table, sometimes we call it Focus, it's whatever. But at the table on Thursday nights, we've been going through the book of Acts with our students all year long. Just walking through chapter by chapter. And it has been a great thing to go through. We have been loving it, and it has been so encouraging to me and so encouraging to our students. A great book to see what God does starting His church, how He spreads His gospel across the world. And so we've been going through this, and a couple of weeks ago we came upon chapter 17. Chapter 17 is a pretty cool chapter. It's mostly known for what people consider to be maybe one of Paul's most famous sermons. That's the sermon to the Athenian philosophers there on Mars Hill. But the passage that stuck out to me was a real short one. Just 3 verses long, and it's that passage that I want to read to you today. Acts 17. What's happened is Paul has just recently taken the gospel into Europe. He's in Macedonia. And there's kind of a pattern that usually takes place. He goes into a town, shares the gospel. Some people get excited, other people get mad, and then he gets kicked out. Okay? He either gets beat up or he has to flee. And so he was in Thessalonica. He spreads the gospel and things are going well. And then a riot starts and they have to sneak him out of the town at night. That's where we start here tonight or today in Acts 17 verse 10. It says, as soon as it was night, the believers sent Paul and Silas away to Berea. On arriving there, they went to the Jewish synagogue. And now the Berean Jews were of more noble character than those in Thessalonica, for they received the message with great eagerness and examined the scriptures every day to see if what Paul said was true. And as a result, many of them believed, as did also a number of prominent Greek women and many Greek men. Now, Luke writes this book, the book of Acts, to describe the growth of the church and the spread of the gospel. He does not write this book to pay compliments to people. He does not write this book to just shell out kind of what he thinks is awesome about a particular group of people. And so, when Luke does pause to do that, when Luke thinks it's necessary to pause and point out and stop, and let me tell you how great these people are because it's worth noticing. It's worth pointing out and looking at. And so I looked at this and I wanted to take a look at what it is he says here that he likes so much. Verse 11. Now the Bereans Jews were of more noble character than those in Thessalonica, for they received the message with great eagerness and examined the scriptures every day to see if what Paul said was true. That's interesting to me because if it were me, I would expect Luke to say something like they were of more noble character because they had such great faith. And whatever Paul said, they took to heart. They took it as true. Luke says, no, what's awesome about them is they didn't fully trust Paul. With great eagerness, they received his message. They received the gospel, and yet they also went back and dug into the word every day to see if what he said was true. Two things Paul says, or Luke says about the Bereans. That they took in God's word with eagerness, and that every day they examined it. Eagerness and examination. Are those two words that would describe you and your relationship to God's word? Are those, if someone were to ask you to describe how you feel about the Bible and what your life in the word looks like, are eagerness and examination the two first words that pop to your mind? Or are words like bored, frustration, guilt, dryness, maybe should? I really should read my Bible more. I ought to spend more time. Are those words that describe you? Here's my little confession as we kick off. I've been a Christian for over 20 years now, grew up in a Christian family, went away to a Christian school. My major in college was biblical literature, studying the Bible. I've been in ministry for 8 years now, and if I were to be honest with you, most of my life would be defined more by that latter group of words. The eagerness and examination are not real high up there in the way that I have treated the Bible. Something's wrong with that. That's not right. And my hunch is that most of us in this room fit in that same category along with me. And that's not right. That's not good. Now, let me clarify what I'm saying, because most of you think here that I'm saying you need to read your Bible more. That's not what I'm saying. Because we've all heard plenty of those sermons. You need to read your Bible more. You really need to get in the Word more. A good Christian reads his or her Bible. And we've heard all those sermons, and those are good, and those are true, and those are right, but I'm not sure they're helping very much. Like in my own life, those kinds of sermons, those kinds of lessons, they serve to, work up enough guilt in me to last me till Wednesday. And then I'm kind of back to where I was, right? I'm not sure they're helping. You see, here's the issue. When it comes to this particular issue, there are two different levels to the problem. And I want to try and address that deeper one for a bit here today. Let me try to illustrate. If you were walking along with your friend, kind of walking along the sidewalk together, walking along the road, and all of a sudden your friend bent down and picked up something that he saw on the ground, and he picks up and you look over and you notice that he has in his hand a 10-carat diamond. And he's examining it, and it's a little bit scuffed up because it's been, sitting there on the road for a while, and who knows what's kicked it or run over it or whatever else. And it's a little bit dirty. It's kind of caked with mud around some edges, and he kind of looks at it for a second, turns it over and goes, bleh, flicks it away. Then a couple steps later, he walks and he sees a nice shiny penny sitting on the ground, and he picks that up and he goes, ooh, now that's a keeper. Okay? Pops that in his pocket. There are two levels to the problem that you need to deal with there. The first, the surface, the most obvious is, dude, you just threw away a diamond. Okay? That was a diamond, man. You need to go find that. Go get that. That's the first and most obvious. But there's a deeper issue there, and the deeper issue is this. You don't have the ability to grasp real beauty, real value, real worth when it's right in front of you. You'd rather have a penny than a diamond. Let's go to the deeper issue. You need to be able to understand, and you can scold him all you want, but until you can show him the true beauty of that diamond, until he really values what is valuable, you're not going to get very far. And I want to go towards that second level today. The problem with us is not that we don't read our Bible. The problem is that I don't want to. The problem is that I don't have a heart that even wants to very often. And talking about how I should all the time doesn't help. Tell you what else doesn't help is a number of the analogies or illustrations or metaphors that we've used for the Bible over the years. Many preachers and Sunday school teachers, and I'm throwing myself in this group, I know I've done the same kinds of things. We use these illustrations for the Bible that I'm not convinced are all that helpful. They're partially true, but we'll say things like, maybe you've heard this, that the Bible is like a roadmap for life. Like for our journey of faith, you got to have a roadmap to be able to find your way around, to get where you need to go. And the Bible is that roadmap that God has given us to be able to find our way around and get where we want to go. Or maybe you've heard this one, that the Bible, this is like God's little instruction manual for the Christian life. And if you want to be able to put all the pieces together of the Christian life and make it all fit the way it's supposed to, you're going to need to read the instruction manual. You're going to need to take a look at it, okay? Here's what I don't like about that illustration, either of those. There's some truth to them, but the problem is this. Nobody likes roadmaps and instruction manuals, right? Like nobody wants to read a roadmap or an instruction manual. Nobody asks, can I have roadmaps for my birthday, please? I just love to look all over Missouri and just read all, like, nobody sets out instruction manuals like on their coffee table for conversation starters, okay? That's not what, we know we need those things, but we don't want them. They're sort of a necessary evil. There's something that we have to read. There's something that we have to go into. We need them, but we don't desire them. We don't want them. And I think so often that is, whether we could say it out loud or not, the way we feel about God's Word. Like, I know I need it. I just don't want it. I don't get any joy from it. I don't desire to read it. I just read it because, yes, I kind of have to. And I think so often we talk about it in those ways, and that's not helping very much. That's not the way, by the way, that God talks about His own Word. And that's not the way the Bible talks about itself. And that's not the way God's people have historically talked about God's Word. Longest chapter in the Bible, Psalm 119. 176 verses in it. 176 verses. All about how amazing and beautiful the Word of God is. That's what it is. Over and over and over again, how amazing and beautiful the Word of God is. And I'm not going to read the whole thing to you here, but I want to read to you just a few pieces from it, a few excerpts that you'll find as this psalmist writes about his feeling for the law, his feeling for God's Word, and ask yourself, is there any bit of this that I can relate to? Does any of this sound like me at all? He says this in verse 16, I delight in your decrees. I will not neglect your word. In verse 20, my soul is consumed with longing for your laws at all times. In verse 72, the law from your mouth is more precious to me than thousands of pieces of silver or gold. Verse 96, to all perfection I see a limit, but your commands are boundless. Verse 103, how sweet are your words to my taste, sweeter than honey in my mouth. Verse 111, your statutes are my heritage forever. They're the joy of my heart. Verse 120, my flesh trembles in fear of you. I stand in awe of your laws. Verse 131, I open my mouth and pant, longing for your commands. And on and on and on he goes, just describing the beauty and the importance and the value of God's Word and how much he loves it and desires it. And let's just remember here, New Testament hasn't even been written. Like, he's not talking John 3:16. He's not talking about the book of Philippians. He's talking about Leviticus. He's talking about Numbers. When's the last time you found yourself saying, my soul is consumed with longing for Leviticus? I ache for the book of Numbers. Okay, you start talking like that, even in church, people are going to be like, man, you're weird. I long for Leviticus. He longs for Leviticus. Surely this is exaggeration. Surely this is some kind of poetic hyperbole. He can't be talking that way about Leviticus, about Exodus, about Numbers. Surely this is some sort of... I don't think it is. See, you got to understand, to the people of God, the law was more than just a set of rules to follow. The law meant, God's word meant that the almighty creator of universe who had established this entire earth, who created it, who oversaw all of it, was not keeping himself at a distance. That he was willing to break himself into history, break himself into their lives, and make himself known. He didn't have to do that, and they knew that. He didn't have to make himself known. He didn't have to make his will known. And that was solid ground for them in the middle of a shaky world, that God himself would reveal himself to us. You'll see this actually if you read through Psalm 119. You'll see it over and over again. He kind of connects his longing for the Word to his longing for God, because he knows that the two are so closely connected. Or there's this other passage that I find really interesting. 1 Samuel 3:21. It talks about Samuel as a young man growing up in Shiloh. And it says this: the Lord continued to appear at Shiloh, and there he revealed himself to Samuel through miraculous signs and activities. No. Revealed himself to Samuel through extraordinary visions. That's not what it says, is it? Revealed himself to Samuel through his word. I don't know if you've ever said to yourself or said to God or said to anyone else, man, if only I could know him. If only I could just know God a little bit more. I mean, if Christianity really is a relationship, if I could just have that, if I could just hear from him, if we could just sit across a table and talk, if only I could know God a little bit more. You can. This is God's heart. This is God's mind in your hand. You want to know him? You can. He reveals himself through his word. But I'm getting ahead of myself. There's a particular verse that I really like in 119 there. It's verse 103. I'll read it again. I read it before, but it says, how sweet are your words to my taste, sweeter than honey in my mouth. I like this one because it brings out one of my favorite metaphors for the Bible. I mentioned some that I don't like. Here's one that I really do like. That the Bible is like food. And this springs up a number of different places, kind of in the scriptures. The psalmist, twice at least, in 119 and 19, points to the word of God being like honey here. And then Matthew will say in 4:4, he'll compare God's word to life-sustaining bread. You know the passage. Man doesn't live on bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Peter will tell his readers that they ought to crave God's word like infants crave milk. And Paul will say that the deeper teachings, as we advance further on into theology and doctrine and the deeper teachings of God's words, that's like solid food, or some translations say like meat. Okay? Several different times in the scriptures you see this idea spring up that God's word is like food. And I'll tell you why I like this one so much. Because unlike roadmaps and instruction manuals, food is something that we all need and we want. Like I need food, but I also crave food. I crave like a ribeye steak dinner, okay? I want that. I desire that. And people love to eat. We need food and we want it. There are two groups of people who don't. There's at least one group of people that doesn't want food and one group of people that doesn't need food. First group of people is sick people. Right? Like when you're sick, when you've got the flu, when you've got a stomach bug or a cold, your appetite is gone. It's the one time in my life that I don't want to eat, when I'm sick. And I think there might be some truth there as well. That those who don't want to eat might just not be that healthy. There's one group of people that doesn't need food. Dead people. And so if I've been going along in my life for the last several years without this and I'm just doing fine, it's not really seeming to affect me, I don't need it that much, that might not be a good thing. Because dead people don't need to eat. And sick people don't want to eat. Now hear me. I recognize that in every Christian life, even those who are growing and maturing and chasing after God, in all of our lives, we experience periods of dryness, where it's difficult to pray, or where we pick up this thing and we start reading it and it's just stale and it just feels lifeless. That is a part of every Christian life at some point. And if that's you right now, the last thing I want to do is make you feel more guilty for that or anything like that. That's not the issue. But if it's been years since I've wanted God's Word, if it's been years since I've had any eagerness or excitement, that might be more than just a phase. There might be more to that than if all I find in this is boredom, then there may just be that something is not right with me. It's like my friend. My friend's father would say to him, my friend's father used to listen to classical music all the time while my friend was growing up, Bach and Beethoven and all that stuff. And my friend hated it, and he would always dog his dad. This is so boring, Dad. You need to listen to some real music. And of course, my friend growing up in the 80s was sure he knew what real music was. Van Halen, Dad. You need to listen to some Van Halen or Def Leppard, And this is what his father used to say to him. He said, you recognize that statement says more about you than it does about Beethoven, right? Like, it's already well established that Beethoven's music is beautiful, is genius, is incredible composition. So for you to not like it, that just tells me more about you. And I wonder if that's not true of us as well. That to not love it says more about me. If this is boring to me, then the problem might just be me. I love what John Piper says. He's a preacher that I really love to listen to, and he talks about God's Word a lot, talks about the Bible a lot, and he says this, like, if we believe that this is the Word of God, if we believe that this comes from Him, and I believe this, that all joy and all pleasure and all true happiness and everything exciting and every bit of passion ultimately finds its root in God. Every good thing is from Him, or it is a corruption of who He is, or is rooted in Him in some level. If that is true, then by nature, by definition, this can't be boring. It can't be. And so if I'm bored by it, then the problem's not here. The problem is here. Again, let me step back and qualify. I recognize not every part of this book is going to apply to us with as much direct life application, okay? There are passages about what happens if your ox falls in a ditch, okay? And I know that's not... You don't have to be passionate about digging oxes out of ditches or whatever, okay? I know that's not true, but big picture here, the major themes of this, the concept of a God who would create the whole world, and then of us separating ourselves from Him in His sin, and then how He would move throughout all of history to bring us back to Him through His Son, Jesus Christ, and His process of working to restore everything. That can't be boring. That's beautiful. That's amazing, and that is worth talking about. I realize even as I'm saying this, I do you a disservice if I stand up here and pretend like I have this figured out, like I'm full of passion and like I'm just completely in love with God's Word. I am on the front end of this. This is just something recently that God has, I feel, convicted me about in my own life, and I believe it, but I'm not fully experiencing it, but I want to, and I want you to as well. So here I've been for most of this time just talking to you about how this is important and this is valuable, it's invaluable, and we need to love it, we need to desire it, but I haven't really given you too many reasons why we ought to yet. And I haven't really given you much help as to how to go about that yet. So in our last little bit, I just want to do this. I want to give you 3 reasons why I believe God's Word is invaluable. 3 reasons from the Scriptures. Seems like that makes sense. If I'm going to talk about how important the Bible is, I probably ought to use it. 3 reasons from the Scriptures why this is invaluable. And then 4 things you can do to begin to build a hunger for God's Word in your own life. First reason why I believe God's Word is so valuable, so invaluable even, is this. It activates and sustains faith. It activates and sustains faith. Romans Romans 10 is this passage where Paul is kind of describing how salvation takes place in a person. And he'll say this, that if anyone would call on the name of the Lord, he can be saved. And then he says, but how can they call on one that they have not believed in? And how can they believe unless they've heard? And how can they hear unless someone teaches them? And he goes through this kind of whole long list of cause and effect. And then he comes down to verse 17 and he kind of sums it up with this. Consequently, faith comes from hearing the message, and the message is heard through the word of Christ. The reason you and I are even sitting in this room today is because 500 years ago, men like William Tyndale and others thought that it was necessary, in spite of severe persecution, to translate the gospel of God, the message of God, into a language that you and I could understand. So that you or your parent or your grandparent or whoever was first in your family who discovered the good news of Jesus knew it because of this. It awakened, it activated faith in your life. And I believe this, that it sustains it as well. This is valuable because this is what awakens life-saving faith in Jesus Christ in us. And it keeps it going. It keeps it alive. Number 2, the Word of God is invaluable because it brings freedom. John 8 says this, to the Jews who had believed him, Jesus said, if you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Notice what Jesus is saying here. He's not saying, if you hear my word. If you read this every few days. If you hold to my teaching, the word is actually remain, which is kind of a big one in the book of John. Abide is what some translations say. If you remain, if you abide in my word, if you cling to it, if you're faithful to it, not just to hear it, but to obey it, to be my disciple and follow me, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free, which is kind of interesting because that's not how we define freedom, is it? Obedience equals freedom. We don't think like that very often. But if you go down a couple verses, you'll see what Jesus is talking about. Because what they're being freed from is their sins. What they're being enslaved to is what they thought was freedom, to do whatever they want. And that freedom has led them into sin, which blinds them to the truth, which enslaves them to wickedness. And Jesus says that it is through hearing him, it is through obeying him, through following him, that we get set free. As we understand the gospel and understand him. I love what Rodney Whitaker, one commentator, says about this passage. He says, to know Jesus is to be liberated from all error and evil, for it is to know God himself, who is truth and purity and life. This book brings freedom. Number 3, the Word of God is invaluable because it is a source of real, full, lasting, complete joy. John 15:10-11 says, if you obey my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have obeyed my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. Again, you see this kind of condition of obedience again. If you remain in my love, if you obey my commands. But this is what Jesus is getting at. That in hearing him and in obeying him, that in that we enter into him. We enter into this relationship with him where his love and the love of the Father and the life of the Father becomes our life, which is, by the way, what you were made for. You were made to know him. You were made to love him and be loved by him. And that is why it is in hearing him and following him and remaining in him that we will find our deepest, greatest joy. If you ache, if you're empty, if you're weak, if you hurt, there's joy to be found. It's at your fingertips. You might be noticing a trend here. This book is valuable because it helps us have faith in Jesus. This book is valuable because it helps us find freedom in Jesus. This book is valuable because it helps us remain in the love of Jesus. Picking up that? See, here's the deal. There's nothing magical about the Bible itself. We don't read the Bible for the sake of the Bible. We read the Bible to know the God of the Bible. That's the whole point. And reading the Bible to ease our own guilt or to make us feel a little bit more peace or to somehow think that we're building favor with God through that, that's worthless. But to know Him, that's everything. That's everything. And that's worth hanging on to this. That's worth loving this. That's worth reading through this so that we might know God, the one we were created to know and love. All right, 4 ways to help in this, and then I'll be done quickly. First is this: if you do not hunger or love God's Word, if you don't desire it in your heart, ask God to give you a hunger for His Word. Ask Him. I can't see Him refusing that request. I can't see Him ignoring the cries of His people to God. Let me see how beautiful your Word is. Let me love it as I should. Let me want it as I should. Ask Him. Number 2 is cut out the junk food. I think that's what I put it up there. Cut down on junk food. There you go. I told you earlier that there are 2 groups of people who actually don't want or need food. That's not totally true. There's one other set of people. Like there's one other time in my life when I wouldn't want a steak dinner, and that is if I had spent all day gorging on junk. If I had spent all day like stuffing myself with chicken McNuggets. My son, Hudson, 2 years old, he loves chicken McNuggets. That might be why he's 2 years old and weighs more than his 4-year-old sister, okay? Loves chicken McNuggets. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with chicken nuggets. Nothing wrong with that. But here's the deal. If I let him feed on those all day long, then I shouldn't be surprised that he doesn't want to eat better things when the time comes. Or worse, if I only let him eat nuggets for his entire life, then I shouldn't be surprised that even when he does taste something as beautiful and wonderful as steak, that he won't even like it. Because he's never developed a taste for it. Like if you're going to spend your whole life feeding yourself with the things of this world, and I'm not even talking about like wicked things. I'm just talking about all the other media that we let into our lives. I spend so much time on the internet or watching TV or checking Twitter or listening to talk radio or listening to music, and then I'm surprised that I've got no appetite for the things of God. That just makes sense, right? I'm not telling you can't watch movies. I'm not telling you can't play video games or be on the internet. I'm telling you that if you want to love this, you might need to cut down on some other things. And it's worth it. Number 3, spend time with people who love God's Word. I'm finding this to be true, that this is contagious. That when I'm around people who love the Bible, love the Scriptures, that I get to pick up on a little bit of that. So do that. Spend time with people. And here's the cool thing. It could be a parent, it could be a grandparent or a friend, and just talking to them about the Bible. But you may not even know somebody specifically who has a great passion. You don't have to. You can listen to people. One of my things that I found that has built me up so much in this area, or is starting to build me up so much in this area, is listening to preachers online who love God's Word. I mentioned John Piper earlier. Do this. I just told you to cut down on the internet, but pause on that command for just a second. Okay. Go to YouTube today and type in John Piper, God's Word. And he has a number of sermons on there about the Bible, and a number of it is where I've gotten some of my major ideas for what I even shared with you today. But he has full sermons, and then he has like 2 or 3 minute clips. Just watch a few of those 2 or 3 minute clips. And I'm telling you, doing that has encouraged me so much as I listen to the way he talks about it. And it opens my eyes. It cleans the dust off of that diamond. It smooths out the scuffs so that I see it for what it is. And I love it. Spend time with people who love it. And last is simply read. You'll never develop a taste for this if you never dig into it. You're just going to have to start. And I'm not talking about like 3 or 4 days, every 3 or 4 days reading a couple verses. I'm talking about getting into this thing consistently. Whether that means setting aside a time in the morning that you can do that, or in the evening, you're probably going to need to get some sort of plan, whether that's on YouVersion on your smartphone or something you find on the internet, a Bible reading plan to go through, whether that's as little as, a chapter a day or less than that, whatever it takes, be consistent. Get into it as you ask God to open your eyes. Great place to start, Psalm 119. It might be a little long for you. You can divide it up into 2 days if you need to. That's confession. I had to do that myself. 176 verses. But it's a great place to start. Read, get into it. I believe this. I'm like I said, I'm growing in this and way farther behind than I should be. But I believe that we have been given this amazing gift, this amazing ability to know the heart and the mind of God, which is, like I said, what we were made for. And my hope and prayer for myself and what I've been praying for you is that we would come to see this for what it is, that we would come to value it for what it is, that we would love it, that we would remain in it, that we would let the joy and the freedom of Jesus take over our lives through His book. Let me pray. Father, once again, I just need to acknowledge the truth. And that is that even as I'm up here trying to convince people and even myself, preach to myself about how good your word is, there's nothing I can do here unless your Spirit works. And so I ask, Lord, that over Oakwood Christian Church, that your people would be hungry for your word, and that this would be a church of the book, a church of your word, and that we would love it because it reveals you, because it helps us to love and know you. Give us that kind of heart. Give us desire and change us through your word. I ask you that in the name of